If you hear the music at night, don't follow it. The villager's warning came too late. What happens when a boy's song opens? A gateway to the unknown. Discover the haunting legacy of the flute that couldn't be silenced. Imagine a sound so strange, so hypnotic, that it feels like it isn't coming from this world. That's how the villagers first described it. Not just a melody, but something alive. Something reaching, and it all started with a boy named Martins, who stumbled upon a piece of the unknown, buried deep in the misty Kirnu marsh. Now, Martins wasn't like the other children in the village. He'd been mute since birth, never a single word, not even a cry. As a baby, he communicated through gestures, tilting his head or pointing to things. With a kind of quiet patience, the other boys his age teased him, called him Pictax, a tricky one in their language, because they said his silence hid something. But Martins wasn't tricky at all. He was an observer, always watching the world in ways no one else seemed to, and he especially loved wandering the edges of the Kirnu marsh, the place everyone else avoided. The marsh weren't the kind you'd picture from postcards or books. There was no pretty sparkling water or soft green grasses. The Kirnu marsh were choked with strange, gnarled trees and reeds as thick as men's arms, their roots twisting into the wet, black soil. The air there hummed differently, carrying life in ways that made your skin feel electric. It had its own pulse, one you could hear when everything else went quiet. Villagers told stories about the marsh, mostly as warnings. There were tales of travelers who disappeared after stepping off the narrow paths, stories of voices heard in the fog, calling your name in whispers that weren't quite human. Baba Inga, the eldest woman in the village, loved saying, "It's not just the mud and water that'll swallow you. There, the devil himself makes his bed in that swamp." Martins didn't seem to mind. That's where he'd spend hours, scraping sticks against one another or skipping stones into the shallow pools. One summer evening, just as the sun was turning the sky pale orange, he found something, a reed, perfectly straight and smooth, almost unnatural in its shape. It must have been from one of the marsh, towering grasses. But this one was different from the rest. He picked it up, holding it to the light, and as he did, the hairs on his arms rose to attention, like they'd recognized something he hadn't. When he brought the reed home, he worked all night carving it into something new. By morning, it had taken the shape of a flute. Not a typical flute with a silver shine or neat little keys, but a simple shape, with holes drilled unevenly by Martin's shaky hands. Even then, it had something about it, like it wasn't just a thing he'd made, but something that had been waiting to be found, to take this form the first time he played. It was an accident. He held the flute carefully and, curious, blew softly into its end. The sound startled him. The low notes seemed to ripple outward, almost like a rock thrown in water. It wasn't beautiful in the way you'd expect music to be. It had a hollow quality, a bit like the wind rushing through the cracks of an old door, but fuller, more purposeful, like it didn't just move through the air, but shaped it. Martins tried again, this time putting his fingers over the instrument holes. A higher tune followed, delicate yet jagged, as if nature itself were trying its hand at melody. Something happens when human beings hear sound like that. It's visceral, automatic, gut-level responses we can't explain fully. Sounds like these bypass the brain's logic and slip right into the subconscious. Cultures all around the world, from shamanic traditions in Siberia to ancient Greek beliefs, have long thought of music as a connection to higher or even darker forces. Ancient texts in Mesopotamia talk about notes capable of summoning unseen realms, and here was Martins, channeling something unknowable into the air. The villagers didn't notice right away, but things changed that summer. Word of the strange boy with his flute spread, after few people overheard his playing, late one evening in small villages like theirs. News doesn't travel at seeps like water. Through stone families who walked past Martin's house, would linger at his window, unable to pry themselves away from the music. Some even said they felt tears falling unprovoked, or memories flooding back that weren't even their own. A man who had lost his wife swore he felt her touch for the first time in years. As the music reached him, another felt laughter spill out of them, despite their lips pressing shut. But for all that, no one described the feelings as comforting. Something about the sound unsettled even the hearts it moved. Baba Ilga was among the first to speak up about it. "That's no boy's music," she would mutter through her crooked teeth. "That's the devil cleaning his throat." The villagers laughed it off initially. Baba Ilga called half the village cursed anyway. Her warnings were a kind of folklore on their own. But privately, even the skeptics felt what she meant. The music seemed too beautiful to a natural like a voice, singing what no earthly throat should be able to. One stormy evening Martins played again. Under his house's cracked sod roof, a few people gathered just out of the rain, leaning against the wooden walls for cover as the tune floated through the air. That night something strange happened. A girl, only 8 years old, by the name of Selma, went missing. She had been with the other children, playing near the tree line. When she wandered away, the boys with her didn't see her walk off. They didn't see anything, except for the way the marsh fall curled, slow and deliberate toward the homes. Like it had a purpose. Selma wasn't found. Her parents searched the Kirnu marsh until their voices cracked. Baba Ilga shook her head and whispered, "The devil takes what it's owed." It was Selma's disappearance that marked the change. Fear began to hang over the village, just as heavy as the fog that always loomed at the marsh edges. But still Martins played. The reed flute seemed to press itself to his lips, even when he tried setting it aside. And when he played, the marsh almost seemed to respond. Its reeds swayed harder in the wind, and the water rippled in ways that defied where the breeze was blowing. End of the first chapter. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe and like.